Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the Bedina Shops. We are here at the intersection, the cross section of Minyama Waterfront and Point Cartwright Surf Beach. And we're going to go for a bit of a walk and talk on a glorious Friday morning on the Sunshine Coast. It's 9 AM, I reckon it's early 30s, just starting to get toasty. Come along with me on CoffeeChillTV. And folks, excuse any wind effects, any traffic noise. On today's walkabout, it's going to be another walk and talk. Yes, I'm going to show you some of the sights and sounds in and around Point Cartwright here at the Bedina Shops, Minyama. But I also want to talk to you a little bit of travel talk. I want to get into a topic that I think most of us are grappled with when we're planning our holidays. And folks, today I want to talk about organised travel versus, independent travel. Independent travel, backpacking, self-drive, holidays, winging it, ad hoc, ad lib, just sort of throw something up in the air and see what sticks, open itineraries, extended stays, independent travel. And you've also got organised travel, and you can think about that, from a little half-day trip somewhere to a full-day trip, 2-week tour, to maybe that 6-month cruise, fully catered, fully itinerarized. Everything's laid out for you, and then in the middle you've got kind of a hybrid, haven't you? You've got kind of a mishmash of independent and organised, that kind of jump on, jump off tour bus that you can do. And also you've got that idea that, you go away for 2 weeks and your holiday is a mixture of do-it-yourself, DIY arrangements, it's a bit organic, which way the wind blows, independent. And part of that trip might be organised, half-day trips, full-day trips, etc. So yeah, we're going to talk about the pros and cons and the pluses and minuses, and little strategies and thoughts on organised versus independent travel. And folks, please, I'd love for you to comment after you finish watching this video if you want to share a story or two, an angle on this topic, because I think it's one that most people, when planning holidays, have grappled with. Folks, before we head to Point Cartwright and the surf beach, be remiss of me not to give a shout out to whoever does the gardening here at the Bedina Shops, because that's some impressive topiary, I reckon. I like the pandanus tree, I like the banksia, and I like the hedge. How about you? And folks, if you're in this part of the world, Little Miss Sane, I've got a mate. Shout out to you if you're watching. We often meet here early in the morning for a coffee, and they do an honest flat white at the Miss Sane. Actually, sometimes we go to the mochaccino. Yeah, the mochaccino's rocking too. There's lovely little block of shops. You've got the real estate agent, you got your coffee shop, you got your bait shop, Thai food there as well, bait and tackle, hairdresser, yoga, etc. And if we spin around here, we've got a bit of acupuncture. There you go. Another real estate agency. This is also a great little coffee shop. And, we're here on the corner of Parkana Crescent and Point Cartwright Drive. So we better head towards the beach as we continue this walk and talk. Okay. There you go, guys. What a pack of galahs. Some good native Aussie bird life there, folks. One of the great things about living on the Sunshine Coast is there's just abundant bird life, you know, all different types. And yeah, I hope we don't disturb them too much when we cross the street and head to Alan Walker Park. And before we hit the sand, before we hit the beach. So as we sit in front of the gallery, let's jump into let's dig a bit deeper into the topics. Let's start with independent travel. Independent travel. So, you know, as sort of briefly mentioned at the start, you know, backpacking and freestyle, do it yourself, winging it, you know, having a rough guide, plans subject to change. Maybe one-way tickets are involved when you're doing independent travel. Flexible return tickets, you know. And at the other end of the continuum, obviously, you know, a themed cruise. You know, independent travel. I've done my fair share. Let me share with you some of my experience and some of my perspectives. So independent travel, you know, I spent 6 months backpacking through Central and Southern Africa, similar time frame, Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia, North America, and I also spent a bit of time in Europe and did a little bit of independent travel, though mostly in Europe. I was a package tourist. So, you know, what about the experience? I remember flying. I had an around-the-world ticket. So it's one of those open itinerary tickets, you know, a whole heap of one-way slots. And I flew Melbourne to Hawaii. I turned up late. I didn't have anything organised. No organised tours, no organised accommodation or transfers, you know. And, you know, guys, even if you like to fly by the seat of your pants, I'm a big believer now in at least booking the first night's accommodation, particularly if you're arriving in a place you've never been to before. The first night blues, the first night stress. You know, you want to be a roughy-tufty backpacker and, you know, just wing it. I arrived in Hawaii late at night. I ended up getting in some dodgy minivan, taken to a less than salubrious backpacker place with no air conditioning. It was like a 20-bed dorm. Woke up the next day, just awful. I couldn't get out of there quick enough, you know. So, and that was one of my earliest forays into independent travel. And, you know, that's one of the downsides. In some respects, it's exciting to be independent. Oh, what are we going to do? Let's just suck it and see, you know. But unfortunately, I was in Hawaii for just a few days. And, you know, I went to Waikiki Beach, I changed hotels, and then I got the time zone mixed up, and I was off to Los Angeles. Oh, you know what? I love my war history museum, my military tourism, but I never made it to Pearl Harbor. You know, if I'd been on an organised tour and had everything set up, you know, someone nice and friendly, clean cut would have met me at the airport, taken me to the designated hotel. Next day, would have got a wake-up call, and I would have made it to Pearl Harbor, and I would have made it to some other major tourist attractions. You know, really, all I saw in Hawaii was Waikiki Beach and inside of two accommodation houses. So, guys, there's an opportunity cost. You know, you want to be you want to be self-driven and self-organised and independent, but you might miss out, guys. You might miss out. Could be worse than that, guys. I could have been robbed, deflowered. I could have been taken to some, I was taken to a dodgy hotel. But I could have been taken to a worse dodgy hotel, couldn't I? So, you know, all that glitters is not gold when you're travelling independent. That's been my experience. And, you know, if we flip independent versus organised, I had a coffee yesterday with one of my friends at Bettina, and she said, you know, she finds that independent travel can be a little bit stressful, you know, and not relaxing, you know. I had a coffee this morning with some folks at Mooloolaba, and one of my husband and wife, and she was saying to me, you know, she doesn't want to do the research. She wants somebody else to do the research. And the two of them also made a really important point about organised versus independent travel. Let me dig a bit deeper into that. These folks made the point that it's kind of horses for courses, you know, that some locations lend themselves to organised tours. Some locations lend themselves to independent travel. And they gave me an example. Like me, they've been to Bali many times. And, you know, when they go to Bali, they book their return ticket, they might book their hotel, but then the rest is an open agenda. It's do it yourself, you know, independent. They also mentioned to me that they're planning a trip to Vietnam soon. Neither of them have been to Vietnam. And, you know, there's a couple of things about that Vietnam trip. They're concerned a little bit about the language barrier. And, you know, I've been to Vietnam a couple of times. It's been a while, but, yeah, there are certain parts of Vietnam when you get outside of the so-called tourist traps where there are language barriers. You know, there's different currencies, different customs and cultures. And they also said, you know, kind of that FOMO thing again, fear of missing out. You know, if they just sort of turned up themselves, are they going to miss out on seeing, you know, some really cool tourist attractions? And, you know, I come back to my own example. I've only been to Hawaii once. And I never made it to the Pearl Harbor landmark. And now I regret that. So, you know, when they go to Bali, it's all DIY. When they go to Vietnam for the first time, I think next year, they're going to have a fair bit of organised tourism in their trip. So, you know, think about the location, think about your own familiarity with a place, and, you know, then I think you'll make the right choice. Of course, guys, if you're on an organised tour, it can get a bit blurry, you know. One day rolls into the next. I remember doing a Great Britain and Ireland organised tour in the early 90s, Contiki tour. I had a great time, and it was fantastic because I went by myself, and I made a lot of fast friends on the tour bus. We had a great time. But, you know, I remember by the end of the trip, someone on the bus said to me, you know, this is the ABC tour. I said, what do you mean? She said, it's another bloody castle. And it does become a little bit like that. And on some organised tours, the itineraries, you know, they're pretty stacked up. You don't get much of a chance to stop and smell the roses, as you would do if you're kind of on more that self-paced DIY independent travel mode. Okay, now you may or may not hear the sea breeze, the ocean, the waves, the rustle in amongst the trees. Folks, I want to talk to you about the, you know, having your cake and eating it the best of both worlds, the mishmash between independent and organised. And I'm going to take you back to the early 2000s. I'm going to talk to you about a trip I did with a couple of friends to the city we know as Adelaide, the city of churches. So folks, that trip to Adelaide with a couple of mates, you know, and we'd all travelled to many places within Australia, but none of us had been to Adelaide. And we went to Adelaide. I suppose the number one agenda item was to watch the one-day cricket international between Australia and India at the Adelaide Oval. Australia won that match, and it was a fantastic day at the Adelaide Oval. But that holiday, that was a blend of independent and organised travel. Let me tell you a little bit more. And so folks, we were down there for several days. We had our return tickets. We booked our hotel in advance, and we also booked a couple of tours in advance. We booked a day tour to Kangaroo Island and a day tour to the Barossa Valley, a wine tasting tour and a Kangaroo Island eco-tourism day trip tour. They were both big day trips. We also did a fair bit of own arrangements holidaying on that trip. You know, we hit the casino, we hit the Central Business District, CBD, we did a bit of cafe hopping, we jumped on some local trains and sort of, you know, so we did a bit of our own stuff at our own pace, and we also did a couple of big day trips. So folks, that trip to Adelaide, we could have done it 100% independent. We could have done a self-drive holiday once we got there. So, you know, we could have even driven to Adelaide if we wanted to. So, you know, we could have hired a car and, you know, gone to the Barossa Valley for the day and come back. We could have hired a car, gone down to the port, driven the car on the ferry, crossed to Kangaroo Island. We could have driven around Kangaroo Island and come back to our hotel. Probably would have been slightly cheaper. The independent option may have been slightly cheaper. But guys, how was the convenience of organised travel? Both of those day trips were door to door. They picked us up at the hotel, they took us off to the winery. Hey, we had quite a few wines. We were in no condition to drive. Dropped us back. For the Kangaroo Island, they picked us up really early. We got back, fairly late. It was a big day trip. And, you know, we didn't have to worry about getting stuck on the island, about missing the boat. You know, we were on a small group, sort of minivan for both of those day trips. Good bunch of people, you know, touch wood. We had a good bunch of fellow travellers. Everything was laid out for us, you know, and it was fantastic. And a final story before we hit the beach. Also a day trip and a winery involved, this time Cape Town. 1994, I spent about 6 months backpacking through Africa, Central and Southern Africa in 1994, and I was doing the trail, you know, along the beach in beautiful South Africa, and I was in Cape Town, and I was staying in a backpacker place with other independent travellers. We'd heard about these wineries in Cape Town, and so, you know, we took off our backpacker hat and we became day trippers. There was 5 of us, and you know, we booked a tour bus just for ourselves, and this gentleman, he took us around to several wineries in Cape Town, dropped us back to the youth hostel, and so, you know, we were independent travellers, backpackers, but we weren't afraid to dabble in a little bit of organised tourism. My advice is don't be too hardcore. Don't be, oh, I only travel independently. Don't be, oh, I only travel with everything organised. Guys, there's kind of a happy medium in the middle, isn't there? A little bit of both. Point Cartwright, guys. Not the most famous beach on the Sunshine Coast. It's not a patrolled beach. You always got to be careful when you're swimming at a beach that's not patrolled by the local surf lifesavers. You see out there, guys, you have a shipping lane. There you go, a shipping lane. You've got a family there at the beach today. It's a beautiful day. I reckon it's about 30 degrees. It's quite breezy, so excuse the wind effects, but yeah, guys, Point Cartwright, what a lovely spot it is. And folks, we're going to head in this direction, then we're going to go left, and we're going to wrap up this video log, this vlog, looking across at the ships, at the boats, Minyama Waterfront. Let's head to Minyama, and we'll do some final thoughts on the topic of organised travel versus independent. Okay, let's head to Minyama Waterfront. So folks, before we hit the water again, and I share with you a final story and some final thoughts, late mail, on organised versus independent travel, I suppose I should talk a little bit about Minyama. So folks, Minyama, some of the most expensive real estate on the Sunshine Coast can be found in this little pocket. A lot of additions, renovations, extensions happening in Minyama, and it's hard to overcapitalise, guys, because this is, you know, elite when it comes to property values, land values in the Sunshine State, Minyama. This is some of the most expensive real estate, not just in Queensland, but you know, anywhere in Australia. Minyama, particularly Minyama Waterfront. So let's head to the waterfront. So right across the road, Harbour View, little small block of units there. You got one of those big McMansions, got a big powerboat out the front there too. Here on Harbour Parade, as it would be on the boat harbour. There goes a jet ski. And you know, guys, in addition to expensive houses, you've got some expensive nautical action happening here as well. So, you know, I love this place, Minyama, but guys, you thinking about buying some real estate here? Yeah, you need some serious coin if you're going to buy into this tightly held market, Minyama. But what a special part of the Sunshine Coast it is. So there's a beautiful breeze coming over my shoulder, and you know, if those wind effects affect the audio, well, you know, I'm not going to I'm not moving from it. It's shady, there's a beautiful breeze, and this is a nice spot for me to just make those final points as we talk about organised and independent travel. So folks, my last story, I hope brings it all together. And it's a recent story, just last year, after a long-term hiatus, I think about 25 years between drinks, I finally made it back to Chiang Mai. I'd travelled to Chiang Mai as a backpacker in 1993. You know, I was travelling more by myself, but I was sort of hanging out with other backpackers, and you know, we were just sort of collaborating a bit, but it was very much you know, backpacker and very much independent travel to Chiang Mai. I had a great time. Fast forward 1993 to 2025, I'm finally back in Chiang Mai. It was awesome. And you know, I bought a one-way ticket. I didn't buy my return ticket. I wasn't sure how long I'd stay, but I did have my hotel booked. And I had a rough idea of some things I wanted to see in Chiang Mai and in Chiang Rai. What happened next? I arrived at the Top North Hotel and they had a tour desk. And Miss Pani from Tapai Travel, she's awesome. I will put some notes about her services. I don't get any kickbacks, guys. We get no kickbacks on this channel, but I'll put a note there just in case you're thinking of going to Chiang Mai and you want a good tour organizer. I'll also put a link to the Top North Hotel. It's a great hotel. But back to the story. I've just turned up. I had several nights booked and I just had a casual chat at the tour desk in the hotel, and before you knew it, I had 2 day trips organised. A huge day trip to Chiang Rai. We saw 3 temples, the red, the blue and the white, and we also visited Singer Park. It was a big day trip, thank God. You know, I had a private driver, so I wasn't on a tour van. So it was that kind of, you know, in the middle of the continuum. It was fantastic. The next day, I visited a couple of caves with my private driver, organised by the hotel. And this was an interesting one, guys, because one of the caves I visited, it was my second visit to that cave. When I got there, you could pay like $5, it was 100 baht, for a local tour guide to take you around the cave complex. It was worth every cent. She had a torch. She made sure I was aware of any safety hazards. She pointed out the meaning of different rock formations and the temple and the history. And I gave her a tip, 100 baht as well. You know, don't believe in cheap Charlies on this channel. She's worth every cent. You know, I could have jumped in that cave by myself. All kinds of things could have gone wrong. You know, so the benefit of a little bit of organisation, an organised tour guide on a self-drive day trip, on a trip where I just had a one-way ticket. So impressed I was in my first few days in northern Thailand after a 25-year hiatus that I extended my stay at the Top North Hotel and I organised some more travel and day trips and half-day trips and the transfer back to the airport with the tour desk at the Top North Hotel. So, you know, guys, I'm someone who has travelled, you know, far and wide, independently. My backpacker, slow travel credentials are strong. But, you know, I'm not one of these pathetic travel snobs who's like, oh no, we won't do anything organised. You know, that's against our religion. Don't be like that, guys. You know, mix it up a bit. Do a bit of do-it-yourself, DIY, and don't be afraid to let other people, you know, take the wheel and literally and figuratively and sit back and relax, you know. Let someone else do the work. Final thoughts. Organised travel, you know, the inside oil on a destination. Little tidbits of information that you don't know, that you will not find on Wikipedia. That local tour guide can really help you when you do that. Once again, there's nothing wrong with doing a bit of research yourself, and that can be quite rewarding to research and build your own itinerary too, guys. Hey, You know, a little bit of both is great, isn't it? And at this junction, let's wrap up this vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. My musings on organised travel, independent travel, that kind of hybrid, mix and match, a bit of both in the middle. Folks, please do not be shy in sharing some of your experiences and angles on this topic. Just drop a note into the comment section. Keep it classy, of course, and first and foremost, most importantly, cheers for watching, and I hope to see you again very soon on Coffee Chill TV. All the best.